So now let's move on to the Phakic IOL, and it's my pleasure to introduce Rudy Noyes, our president-elect.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. And these are my financial disclosures, and the ones on Ophthalmic and Johnson & Johnson are relevant for this talk. You're all aware of the Phakic IOLs that we have based on the lenses in the anterior chamber and in the posterior chamber. We don't have any angle-supported lenses anymore on the market, so we have to concentrate on the iris-fixated lenses, and in the posterior chamber, the ICL. So the Artisan very-sized non-foldable lens is introduced in 1991, consists of PMMA, and is available up to minus 23.5 diopters. And the foldable Artiflex Veriflex lens was introduced in 2004, consists of a PMMA optic with silicone haptics, and is available up to minus 14.5 diopters. If you look at the long-term visual outcomes of the Artisan rigid lens, you can see that in terms of safety, loss of more than 2 lines occurs in 0 to 2% of the cases, so it's very safe. And in terms of efficacy, there is a huge variability, actually, if you look at the eyes that have at least the uncorrected vision of 20/20, which varies from 2% to 74%. We have followed a prospective case series of 460 eyes of 250 patients with the Artisan implantation in a myopic or toric version as of 1998, and the patients were measured annually. Data reported at 1, 5, and 10 years. The mean preoperative age at the time of implantation was 41 years. And if you look at the refractive stability, you can see that the spherical equivalent changed by more than half a diopter from 1 to 10 years in 67% of patients. And over 10 years, there was a myopization of roughly minus 0.79 diopters. And in the subset of patients, we measured also an increase in actual length. So that could, of course, then be the explanation for the myopization in these cases. This was also followed, of course, by the loss of these patients, the decrease in uncorrected distance visual acuity, which was actually a 1.5 Snellen line over that 10 years time period. If you look at the predictability, of course, because of this myopization and change in refraction, the predictability being within 1 diopter changed from 84% at 1 year to 52% at 10 years. And looking at a 0.5 diopter range, it decreased from 64 to 31% at 10 years. Now, one of the important questions, of course, is, are the iris-fixated lenses, are they safe for the corneal endothelium? And if you look at the series that are there in the literature presented, you can see that there is quite a range, ranging from 3.6 to 15.2% actually, depending probably on the follow-up time here. We followed our cohort actually for over more than 10 years in 507 eyes with patients who had the Artisan myopia or Artisan toric lens. And this patient cohort is quite unique because we used the same specular microscopy protocol over this entire time period. And in that sense, we have, I think, quite a good evidence strength of this cohort. Now, what we saw is that from 6 months to 10 years postoperatively, the cell loss was 16.6% in the myopic lenses and 21.5% in the toric lenses. And if you correct that for the annual physiological loss of 0.6%, these values are 10.9 and 15.8. And the risk factors for this loss was a shallow anterior chamber depth and a smaller distance between the lens in the periphery and in the center. Typically, if you look at the exploitation rates here of these lenses, it was at a 10 years time period, which is here 1% in the myopic group and 3.8% in the toric group. But if you look over the whole time range, actually, you can see here the drop that occurs after 10 years, where the exploitation then increased to 6% over the whole cohort, 4.8% in the toric group. And this time of explantation actually is quite long, 12 years on average, actually. So follow-up to find these changes for more than 10 years actually is quite needed. What happens in the Artiflex lenses, so the foldable versions, if you here look at the 5 years chronic endothelial cell loss, This loss was 10.5% in the myopic group and 10.2% in the toric group. Risk factors for the explantation. So if we look at the whole cohort, also including the hyperopic versions of the Artisan, so in 1,037 eyes, which were followed for more than 6 years, we could see that actually, again, at the 10 years time period, actually the survival rate goes down, and the overall explantation rate was 12% after roughly 14 years, as you can see here. What was typical is that, especially in the hyperopic version of the Artisan, the reason for the explantation was the endothelial cell loss, as you can see here in this graph, while in the other versions of the lens, in 2/3, it actually was because of the cataract formation. What do we know about the ICL, the implantable Collamer lens, which was introduced in 1991 and is also available in different versions. If you look at the visual outcomes here with this lens, safety loss more than 2 lines varies from 0 to 7%, and uncorrected vision, again, a large variability of 12 to 85%, achieving 20/20. In this series of outcomes at 10 years, you could see that there also was some regression, as we found in our Artisan lenses, depicted here in this graph, and the mean percentage of endothelial cell loss here was 5.3%, but with a large range. In terms of cataract formation, 10.5% actually developed anterior subcapsular cataract here, and in 3.5% of the cases, these lenses had to be explanted and cataract surgery performed. And this probably was related to the fact that the central vault over 10 years time period decreases from 460 to 184 micrometer. What about the outcomes in ICL cases, more than 5 years follow-up? You can see here that the mean percentage of endothelial cell loss varies up to 9.2% with a large spread also. The cataract incidence varies up to 54%, and the explantation rates because of cataract up to 18.3%. There are only a couple of series available where they look specifically at the annualized endothelial cell loss after the ICL. And interestingly, that figure is also much higher than the physiological loss, going up to 2.3%, so roughly 3 times as what is seen in a physiological cornea. So what could we conclude here? I think that in terms of efficacy, long-term studies show a decrease of uncorrected vision at the 10 years caused by cataract formation and also myopization due to an increase in the actual length. The endothelial cell loss is quite variable, but an annualized loss of 2 to 3 times the physiological loss has been seen with both lens types. Explantation rates after 10 years vary up to 12% for the iris-fixated lenses and 18% for the ICLs. And the risk factors for explantation may be the anterior chamber depth, the endothelial cell density preoperatively, and the refractive status. And for the ICL, it is the increased rate of anterior subcapsular cataract formation. If you take one thing home, it would be to check these patients on a regular basis, to look at the endothelial cell counts and inform them that a phakic intraocular lens implantation may be a temporary solution. Thank you very much.